All right, so we've talked about the ancient ideal male form, and that was kind of boring. But in the 1950s and 1960s, I think we can find some modern context for today's body image issues. The history of the United States is rife with prudish men who, for some reason or another, didn't like pornography and basically anything other than Caucasian heteronormative relationships. So we have the 1873 Comstock Act that prohibited the distribution of obscene materials, and later advertisements for birth control because that was obscene. You had the Hays Code from 1930 to 1968, which was a guideline for film distributors that basically said we won't distribute any movies with homosexuality or interracial relationships. And the Comics Code Authority in 1954 was a voluntary standard set forth, and it technically still exists, to prevent obscene comic books from being produced and sold to children. So, gay porn, while it existed, was not readily available for any young man who wished to find it. But what you could find in abundance was bodybuilding magazines. Bodybuilding as a sport has a pretty dark past, so I'm going to skip over all of that. Go ahead.
So, as a young person in the 90s, you know what I found? Going to Walmart and Target and going to the men's underwear aisle, where they had all the advertisements of ripped guys in front of a couple pairs of tighty whities. I would share this with friends of mine in college, and we all had the same story where we would go to these stores and slowly rip up the shitty plastic and just pull out the picture of the men and steal it and take it home with us. Leave the underwear, take the picture. Because these hot, muscular, roided up guys in these magazines, you couldn't just rip out a page of a magazine, but you rip out the advertisement of an underwear from Hanes.
What's that? Wait, hold on. So I did not know. I've never heard this before. You would
here's the package. You would kind of like tear at the plastic, a big enough hole, and you would grab that main picture and rip it out and leave the underwear.
All right, the whole time are you like looking around to make sure you're not going to get caught?
Of course. You're like 15.
Wait, you were 15 when you were doing this?
If not younger.
You had the internet.
I had AOL 3.0.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, you were there.
Yeah, I was there too.
And the thing is, in college, I would say about 15 to 20 of my friends had the same fucking memory.
How does it, wait, hold on. So this is something that you just came across on your own, though. You just decided one day you were going to do this.
Well, I've been gay for a very long time, and then wandering around, I was like, oh, that guy's hot. And where else could I get such an attractive-looking man without offending or ripping anyone off or truly stealing something? Because did you have a job when you were 14, 15?
Yes.
East Main TV?
Yep.
That doesn't count.
I know.
And I didn't. Subway didn't start till I was 16. So we just took it. And it's something that if your parents found it and you weren't out to them, you could be like, oh, I bought underwear. Easy lie.
I just find it fascinating that you found other friends who independently came to this same behavior.
Gay men are very similar in a lot of ways.
Do you know about forest porn?
Give me an example.
Like
forest, the woods.
So the first time I saw any hardcore pornography was because I found a porno mag in the woods.
Wow. Okay.
This is a common experience among like straight white,
like near the Stones River.
Yeah. Wow.
Go on.
No, this is like a very common experience that like all straight white men from like the 80s, 90s had. That was like our first. If you talk about porn in the woods or like forest porn, that's like a common experience.
No, I did not know this.
You know who I found it with?
No.
Artie Hand.
God, Artie. Oh, he's in jail, right?
I actually don't know. I've Googled it and I cannot find it. I will tell you this. He was actually very, not a very horny kid because he had Cinemax or Showtime, and they had the softcore porn come on at like 2 a.m.
He didn't have the descrambled stuff or the scrambled stuff.
No, it was full nudity. He did not like watching it.
Okay, go on.
Anyway, so he didn't like that. But now, so I will say this. So, you said that East Main TV doesn't count as a job, and you're right, because I think I made like $30 a week there. But,
Exactly. Yeah. You were child labor.
but what I did get out of it, my uncle, subscribed to a lot of stuff and bought a lot of stuff, pornography wise, and he would
wow.
he would have stuff sent to the shop. And so he would get like these porn catalogs, like what movies do you want to buy? And then they'd be like 50 or 60 pages. And they would come in, and Deborah, I don't know if you remember Deborah, at the front desk.
Yes.
Yeah. Deborah would get really offended.
Memory unlocked, but go on.
She would get really offended. She'd be like, "Oh, Sam, God damn it. This porn." And she would toss it in the trash can. And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to take the trash out." And I would take the trash out, and then I would rip open the trash bin, and I would get out the porn. Yeah. But the thing is, like, they were like thumbnails, like all the videos you can buy, like they had to have the cover on it. Yeah. But they were all uncensored. So I would dude, so you're given a brochure with like 1,000 porn images on it. You just had to like hold it up to your face really close.
Wow, Joseph.
Yeah, thanks. There was something. Oh, okay. So one of my favorite things about working there is my uncle was super into, because TVs. He was super into like all technology stuff, and he had this guy that worked for him for a while that would take those. What was the satellite company? Dish?
RCA?
No,
Dish, yeah.
One of those. And they would have those like satellite boxes that you put inside your house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to have like a card or something that goes in it. But he would, the guy that worked for him, I can't remember his name. He like hacked these boxes so that you could get just all the free satellite stuff. Yeah. And so I don't even know if I should tell you. So my uncle would, he would get one of these boxes, and he would just record like porn channels on VCR, like on VHS, just like all day long. And so one day I'm like cleaning up his work area. One day I'm cleaning up his work area, and I noticed that he has a VCR on, but the TV is off. And I'm like, well, I wonder what he's recording. And I turn it on. Just hardcore pornography right there on the screen, like on a big, like 32-inch RCA television. Just two dudes just going at it.
Lovely.
That was the first time I saw gay porn.
Wow. I'll also say I'm on the same age. Go with that.
So another example, I helped him take a TV to his house, because when people would have TVs repaired and they didn't want to pay for it, he would just take them. They were his. And so he got this colossal, like 72-inch or something, like big screen TV that somebody didn't want to pick up. And we took it to his house, and we like set it up and stuff. And when he turned on the TV, it was on a porn channel. And this was not gay porn. It was like three dudes just on one girl. And it was hardcore. And I was like, again, 16. And I was like, well, I've just watched porn with my uncle now. That's good.
What did he say?
Nothing.
Nothing?
He just turned off the TV. He was like, whoops.
I mean, don't tell your mother.
No, not even that. I think it was just.
So wait. This was your mother's brother or your father's brother?
Mother's brother.
Okay. I know more about him than I do your mother, by the way.
Yeah. Wait, from me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll say this. I love my uncle. He's a difficult man. He's fucking hilarious. I don't know which story I want to share with you. Okay, I'll tell you this story, because there are other stories that I could tell you that would be questionable. Like, should you really be talking to a 14-year-old boy about that as a grown-ass man? And the answer is yes, because I thought it was hilarious and I liked it. And it wasn't inappropriate. And I didn't feel violated by any of them. But I will say, the one thing that I'll give my uncle, he is a principled man, in spite of being problematic in a lot of other ways. So I had a friend in high school who was gay or bi. I think he's just gay. I think he was going through experimental phase in high school. But I'm not sure how he met. There was this kid named, What?
How he what? He met him?
Yeah, I don't know how he met him, but it was this older man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Your uncle and him?
no, not my uncle. Is actually it's weird. This gets weird. So my uncle was a member of like the local bear club community, and they would go out to eat every Wednesday night at that at fake Italian, doesn't matter. Um, and it was like 12 of them, and they all know each other, and I guess they've known each other forever, and they would every once in a while have like a new person come in. And there for a while there was this guy named Mikey, and he was probably in his 30s or something, and he actually worked for the city with my brother, who cut grass all the time. And he's very, very large game. Yeah, I know Murfreesboro is a small place.
No, just another flood of memories. I remember
Yeah.
your brother cutting the grass at the Greenway.
Yep. So Mikey works with my brother David, and they both know my uncle Sam, and I'm friends with this kid in high school named Mac. And one day Matt comes in and he's like, yeah, I got a blowjob this weekend from this guy Mikey. And I was like, tell me about Mikey. And he like explains, and I was like, my brother works with him. My uncle knows him. And I was like, he's kind of gross. He has terrible breath, and he's also just not attractive. And he was like, well, a blowjob's a blowjob. And I was like, solid. So I bring this up to my uncle because this is the kind of stuff that we talk about. We're driving, and I was like, hey, your friend Mikey gave my friend Mac a blowjob. And he goes, oh, really? And I said, yep. And he goes, how old's your friend Mac? And I was like, he's like 15, 16. And he was like, So a few weeks later, we're driving in the truck for like a delivery or something. And he goes, well, I spoke to Mikey, or we all spoke to Mikey. And,
exactly. We all spoke to him.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, and he goes, yeah, we're not associating with Mikey anymore. We said, so we hear you've been fucking little boys. And that he's like shunned from their community. And I will give that win to my uncle. He's a principled man for that. I'm really fascinated by the fact that you stole the little inserts.
Everyone did it. Next time you see next other gay friend you have, ask him about it. That's our age.
I will.
Our age, because anyone younger had more access to the internet than we did.
This is true. Okay, so bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is a sport, pretty dark past. I'm going to skip it. Suffice to say, bodybuilding was popular in the early 1900s for the same reasons it's popular today. It's cool to be strong. It's fun to be active. And when you see someone hyperjacked on steroids shilling for protein powders and dietary supplements, you think to yourself, I could look just like that. And then you spend your money. If you want to get rich, get super buff and sell supplements. The bodybuilding industry in the early 1900s ran the same way as it does now. You would have guys get super jacked. They would claim that their physique is due to something they eat, some program that they do, some mindset or whatever. They're basically selling this early internet physical culture, like just in real. There's nothing has changed with the consumer fitness industry, whatever. So in the 1950s and 1960s, when censorship in favor of cultivating a wholesome society was in full swing, gay men reached for bodybuilding magazines like Tomorrow's Man and Physique Pictorial. These were essentially magazines for gay men without being explicitly for gay men. They included art and photographs from gay icons like Tom of Finland, Etienne, and George Quaitance, but also advertised themselves as traditional bodybuilding or health and fitness magazines to fly under the radar, while some advertised as artist reference materials. Now, if you're to look at an issue of Physique Pictorial today, which, by the way, my favorite part of the research was looking at these magazines. They are so creatively done. Like, I love them. Just like as an aesthetic, they're just incredible. If you were to look at an issue of Physique Pictorial de Gay, there would be no doubt that this is a gay magazine, and there was no doubt about it when it was debuted in 1945. Bob Miser, the founder of Physique Pictorial, had his house raided by Postal Service investigators searching for obscene materials, and was subsequently sentenced to 6 months on a prison farm for taking nude photos of a 17-year-old boy. The men featured in Physique Pictorial are not grotesquely muscular, but they are fit. They do have bulging muscles. They are young and handsome and posed in suggestive ways. Just look at them.
Yeah, I've seen this magazine. Yes, it's very obvious.
I mean,
Are
yeah.
there any pictures of two men together besides the Tom of Finland?
I've seen one, and it is two men on a motorcycle, but it was like from an inside spread.
Scroll back up, all the way up. What about second row, fourth from the right?
Oh yeah, this is a good one. You've
Are
got
they just like, are they on the swim team together? No, that's pretty clear.
so these man, that guy has really nice quads. The photo that I'm looking at, or that we're both looking at now, two men. How would you describe them, Ash?
Describe them.
These are beefy men.
I was, they're muscular, beefy in the terms of 2023 is a lot different than it was then.
For 1950s,
staring at a picture that's 2 inches by 4 inches, I really don't get the gay vibe from them. But go back to where you were. I mean, that's pretty queer.
Yeah, that's a given.
Go back to where you were. The cover of the one with the sailor, and then the young guy, third row in the middle, and like the flannel. I definitely get the gay vibe from those two pictures.
Now,
the two men in Speedos, they don't look gay to me. They don't.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, I'm being very serious. The guy in the sailor uniform, second row, and the first from the right.
Yep.
The guy looks gay, just the way the mannerisms in the face, and then the one with the flannel right there where your mouse is, that one looks pretty gay as well.
I think here's how the straight brain works.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything gay about the sailor or flannel guy. Nothing.
Click on one of them and bring it up bigger. It's just the way he's holding his head up, the way he's looking. I really cannot explain it. It's something you just have to experience yourself. I totally get it. I don't know why.
This is fascinating. So obviously on a podcast, you can't see what we're looking at. We're looking at two dudes. That's what we're looking at. Just got this guy's wearing a sailor outfit. This other guy's wearing a flannel shirt. They look like just normal dudes to me. Now the picture that I was looking at was, where is it? Yeah. We've got two guys. They look like Speedos. One is sitting on the shoulders of the other. They're both pretty muscular. They're both shaved, like completely hairless. And, I guess it's homoerotic, but I guess if I'm looking at them, I'm not going to say they're gay. But it is homoerotic.
Sex sells.
Yeah, that's true. I guess if you're looking, this could be like two wrestlers, tag team duo.
Yeah.
But I think from if you're a postal inspector from the 1950s looking for gay pornography, these guys, that's it.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
The other, I do find it fascinating that you've singled out the sailor and flannel guy. There's nothing suggestive at all about them.
Well, the other pictures there are a bunch of beefy, muscular guys. The Tom of Finland pictures, which are obviously all queer, but it's just the expressions on their face. They look very soft. I don't know how it works. It's just something that we all pick out on.
Is this a cowboy? This is a cowboy. He's on a horse.
He is on a horse, yes.
All right.
Save a horse, ride a cowboy.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay.
Is this how you were hoping this would go?
Actually, yes.
All right, good.
Regardless, the imagery that gay men had access to and compared themselves to were hypermasculine and muscular physiques through either photography or, like Tom of Finland, hand-drawn representations. While pleasant and, dare I say, exciting to look at, these magazines also turned the perception of homosexual men on its head. Some interesting research in the 1960s and 70s studying stereotypes of gay men found that the U.S. public held both positive and negative views of gay men, from being sexually, quote, abnormal, perverted, mentally ill, effeminate, and lonely, to more positive traits like sensitive, individualistic, intelligent, honest, imaginative, and neat. But these weren't just casual social perceptions of gay men. Gay men and women were vilified by the U.S. government during the McCarthy hearings. In their search for communists, they included homosexuals as being vulnerable to blackmail. A 1950 Senate... Oh, this gets terrible, Ash. I'm not sorry. I'm glad I found it, but it's horrible. A 1950 Senate investigation helmed by Clyde Huey concluded, quote, "It is generally believed that those who engage in overt acts of perversion lack the emotional stability of normal persons," end quote, and noted that all intelligence agencies are, quote, "in complete agreement that sex perverts in government constitute security risks." This led to thousands of job applications being denied. military discharges, and firing of homosexuals from government jobs. So Clyde Huey, he's the man in charge of Senate investigation. This guy is a real piece of shit. He's the son of a former Confederate States officer. Huey was a segregationist, and in a speech given to the United Daughters of the Confederacy declared, quote, "N-words are not entitled to civil rights and will never get them. There were no N-words on the Mayflower." Real asshole.
It's funny in regards of sensitive positions and jobs now. The biggest red flag is your finances. Not who you are, not where you're from, but your finances, because you can be turned against your country through money.
Oh yeah, if somebody discovered all of my porn search history, would not care. You put that on all the billboards, like spill it on the internet. I don't care. I'll own it. I like what I like. You dangle a few $1 million in front of me. Oh shit. Who knows who I'll turn against.
I know. Yeah, no, it's interesting how things have changed in the 50, 60 years.
And, in fact, if somebody did find what I was looking at, like porn wise, and we're like, you know what you would really enjoy, that's what I would look forward to.
Oh, Lord.
Also in the 1950s and 60s, the FBI kept records of known homosexuals and their associates, and the Postal Service kept track of addresses where materials pertaining to homosexuality were mailed. Gay bars were shut down and raided all the fucking time. Cities swept parks and beaches to clear them of the gays, and the 1952 DSM classified homosexuality as a mental disorder. So
I would add on, not only were they raided by the government, they were also attacked by private citizens.
We're gonna talk about like the Stonewall Riots, but briefly. Do you want to? We have modern.
So I don't have the exact name of the bar, and I don't have the time frame. But one of the largest attacks against my community was in New Orleans, where I believe it's New Orleans. I could double check on this, where someone threw basically what is the firebomb? Molotov cocktail. Am I saying that right?
Molotov.
They threw it into this bar before there were really standards on emergency exits, and about 40, 50 people died because they couldn't escape.
Do you remember when this was?
This was easy. I mean, based on the historical pictures that I've seen that were black and white in the newspaper, probably 50s to the 70s. I'm gonna look it up right now while you keep talking.
That sounds familiar, and so we'll talk about this more in a minute. So it isn't just that the most common stereotypes of gay men were bad. Gay men were seen as being defective or weak and lesser than. The result is decades of harassment by the federal government, police, and municipalities, and as we just learned, regular civilians. There were numerous protests in the 50s and 60s. The Pepper Hill Club in Baltimore in 1955, the Black Night Brawl in Milwaukee in 1961, even the U.S.'s first gay pride parade in Los Angeles in 1966 was an activist event protesting the exclusion of homosexuals from the armed forces. But there are literally dozens of protests during these 2 decades, ultimately culminating in the Stonewall Riots in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of Lower Manhattan. Essentially a police raid gone horribly wrong. On June 28, 1969, New York police officers raided the Stonewall Inn. The raid turned violent and lasted until July 3rd, resulting in over 1,000 protesters and rioters turning up before it subsided. The cops were overwhelmed at first, having to retreat until they could get backup. The Stonewall Riots sparked massive public support, advocacy, and activism. And where you didn't drum up support, you at least drummed up awareness. The public acknowledgement of gays and lesbians as citizens who weren't being treated as full citizens. A year later, June 28, 1970, the first gay pride marches kicked off in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. So, before Stonewall, so we'll pause here. With Stonewall, did you find the incident?
Yeah, it was in New Orleans, the upstairs lounge arson attack. 32 people died, 15 people were injured. They basically threw a firebomb into the windows, and people just died. And they don't know who did it.
Do you know what year that was?
1973.
Shit.
Yeah, and it was swept under the rug.
So before Stonewall, the Beefcake magazines of the 50s and 60s depicted muscular men with mustaches, men in uniform, and this sort of hyper-masculine aesthetic that, to me, outdoes the manliness of the stereotypical straight male. I mean, going back and looking, some of the models and artwork make these men look pretty menacing, intimidating, and authoritative. That is the complete opposite of public perception and common stereotypes at the time. Now, I don't even know if I want to go on this rant, but I wrote it and I meant it. And so this is, if it's not funny, it's not funny. And it's not a bit, but it's meant to be funny.
What you just said, the last sentence?
No, what I'm about to say.
Okay.
So, to my thinking, and I don't know, to me, there is nothing manlier than two dudes fucking. When you consider all the research data that suggests men are more likely than women to commit physical acts of violence in general and are more likely to target other men, the fact that the tendency toward violence is always under the surface makes the concept of gay sex somewhat dangerous. And real men love danger and violence. A dude fucking another dude? Absolute power move. Two male cops fucking each other? What could be more dangerous than that? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that hit as a joke.
So I'm pretty drunk, and I'll say this. I don't give a shit. Aggressive sex is great. Do you know what fisting is?
Oh, yes.
Fisting is probably the most intimate act you can do with another guy because you are as close as you could be with him, and that trusting, loving experience where if one thing went another direction, you could kill him. So there's that trust and level of this intimacy that is so gender stereotypical masculine than anything else a straight person would do. Does that make sense?
It does. And I wrote it kind of like as a jokey, like, but I mean, seriously,
no,
like,
you're right.
Two dudes fucking. That's pretty masculine.
Yeah.
All right. So
straight men couldn't handle it.
Yeah, exactly. The worst thing to happen to straight men ever is getting a prostate exam. I don't know if you're aware of this. Like, whenever that happens, like, men in their 50s, like, that is no. No.
I mean, we're reaching that age.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I've got to get one eventually. But like the joke that you hear most often from like middle-aged straight guys is, did you have to go to the doctor and bend over? Like that's the joke. Like they can't handle it.
Stand-up comedians, both men and women, will make the same joke where, we're getting busy, and then I slip a finger at him, or she slips a finger at me, and it's like, whoa, this feels amazing. What the hell's going on? Why did I wait till my 40s to do this? So yes.
I think that's people that are more open-minded. Like the conservatives that I work with, the butthole is like some sacred, anything touching it is no good.
Yeah, that's not quilted northern.
Yeah. Oh my God, is that pocket? Is that going to become pocket cheese?
No, well, I actually forgot to put it back in the fridge, so it's already nice and warm. So yes, it's pocket cheese adjacent.
Okay, so before we move to the aesthetic of the 70s and 80s, can you explain? We're going to come back to this concept, and I don't think I could explain it. Can you explain the idea of camp?
I honestly am not a fan of the phrase camp. I mean, John Waters is camp. Drag is camp. Voguing is camp. Fairies are camp. I honestly prefer the phrase queer a little bit more. I wasn't sure what you were looking for, an example of camp, but I find that in modern times, queer is a better encompassing phrase that allows anyone within the LGBTQ, whatever the rest of the acronyms are, to fit in there, because it is the idea of going against the norm, going against what is considered the standard of today's time. And it's interesting, just people's opinion on the word queer. Even some of the coworkers I work with that are, white and female in their late 40s, early 50s, they find queer to be offensive. And I don't. I never did. And maybe it is a way for the community to kind of bring that word back in. But camp is just kind of just campy. It's gay. It's fun. It's happy. It's different. But I don't feel everyone fits into the camp category. I don't. I don't feel the need to express myself as a campy person, but I am still a queer person.
So the connection that we're going to come back to, or the reason that we need to define what camp is in these later aesthetics. So some of the research around the LGBT community, or perceptions on gay men in particular, suggests that the reason that we shift aesthetics from sort of the stereotypical effeminate gay man is this conscious rejection of camp in favor of a more modern, masculine gay male.
Are you talking about the trend of the history of the gay community, or right now?
It's more like a trend that we'll see from the 70s to the 80s.
I'll agree with you there. And I'll go ahead and throw this point in. There is this trend amongst gay men, and I appreciate it for what it is, the art form for what it is. If people consider it an art form, but there is this juxtaposition between hypermasculinity and femininity, where if you go to a fetish event, there are a lot of men dressed in typical traditional female lingerie, heels, fishnets, bras, corsets. I don't get it on a sexual level, but it's still within the queer realm of where we consider in 2023. And, my husband, Jacob, and my kind of standard phrase is, you be you. You do what you want to do, makes you happy, and that's all that matters.
That's what I appreciate about you. So, some gay men do not like camp. Is that accurate?
In today's terms, yeah. It's just, there's so many reasons why they wouldn't, upbringing, where they live, general disdain towards being gay themselves, or even just the women. There are so many men that I know that are in their 20s and 30s, that live through the AIDS epidemic, that just cannot stand women. They just hate them.
Oh, that's
wild.
Yeah,
and through that, consider a lot of campy gay men as feminine and thus women. And they can't stand them.
I want to go into that in a little bit.
Okay.
So that's basically what this next part, you summed up basically what I'm about to go over. So anecdotally, gay men may pass off camp as being cliche or outdated or simply unattractive. Some contemporary research suggests that an aversion to camp is more related to how one wants to be perceived. That is, they may be resentful of more effeminate gay men because they themselves had to overcome that part of themselves, or they felt they could never express it. So there's a sort of resentment. There's another correlation with masculine ideology itself. That is, some gay men simply find masculinity more useful and therefore superior to femininity. And I now want to ask you more about I guess the men who you said came out of the 80s who just hate women and therefore hate effeminate men because they associate them with
a lot of it has to do with the lesbian community not supporting gay men during the AIDS epidemic, and thus they associate all women with not helping them, and they just want nothing to do with them.
And this is this persists today.
I mean, older gentlemen in their 50s and 60s, yes. And whatever, and to be fair, it could persist through, the younger generations, through just mentorship. But in college, so many of my older gay friends were like, yeah, I can't stand women. And I just didn't understand it as being raised as respect and love everyone. And then they would tell me, and that made sense. But even then, thinking about it, I was very thankful I was raised well. Like, I cannot fathom why people didn't help each other in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but yet they didn't. And the men that lived through it, that somehow survived, it's difficult to let go of this resentment when all your friends are dead and no one helped you.
I think that makes a lot more sense.
I mean, even now, my older friends during COVID, they had PTSD from the AIDS epidemic because so many people were dying. And it was just the idea that, oh my God, this is another pandemic or epidemic where no one is helping us and we're on our own. And they had this PTSD about it.
That might make for just an entire episode unto itself. But I do remember during COVID, you explaining sort of how the gay community basically took care of COVID on its own. Not on.
Oh yeah. And monkeypox too.
That is wild to me that one, that you have to do that it is a necessity, but two, that you actually have the network and resources to make it happen. That is amazing.
We knew that the government would not help us, so we helped ourselves. And I was on 6 different waiting lists in 6 different states for the monkeypox vaccine. And in certain circumstances, I just used a fake name and a fake address.
God bless. What was it about? I mean, so I feel like the monkeypox thing got overshadowed or maybe swept under the rug due to COVID. But
no. It was gone because we took care of it.
So go into that more.
There was a Wired magazine news article. she was some managing editor or something, and she was just like, monkeypox disappeared, and it was easily like a 4,000, 5,000 word story about where it went. And she touched on the fact that gay men were assisting. I was like, no, we did this. We phone called everyone, phone treated, whatever the hell it is, sent so many mass emails. this clinic has 100 vials available. This clinic has 200. We knew that the high demand through getting it, that the FDA had to figure out a new way to administer it. So that's why they did the sub-epidermal, where they only really had to put it below 1 millimeter of skin, and rather than giving you the 5 millimeter dose, or excuse me, whatever. One little the epidermal, and rather than giving the 5 to 10 millimeter dose, they gave you 1 millimeter dose, so they could have that one dose expand to 9 different men. And we begged them to do this, and I was on hold with all these clinics easily 2 to 3 hours, and we eventually got ours in North Carolina. And I used my sister-in-law's address, and the health department in North Carolina, they didn't care. They were just happy that people were using their resource, and we got our start by using the government's distribution site on saying where all the monkeypox vaccines were. And I know when we were there, the 2 men in front of us and the 1 man after us, listening to them, they lied too. They didn't have any relatives or family in North Carolina. They drove their ass or flew down there to get this vaccine. Friends of mine in Seattle took a bus from Seattle to New York City and picked up people along the route of Canada to get this monkeypox vaccine, because we knew no one would help us. And it's gone because of us. There's no medical breakthrough. There's no delaying. Well, back up. We did delay our tactics. We didn't have sex for 2 months. We just didn't, because that's how it was spread.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, we did, but we were smart about it. And the health departments were... So in the state of Maryland, if you get an STI, depending on the severity, by law, they're supposed to call all your sexual partners and say, hey, you may have been exposed to syphilis or the antibiotic resistant gonorrhea. And I have been one of those calls, but the person that I was with told me pretty much like a week later. And I got that call from the health department 2 months later. And that's 2 months where I could have exposed someone else. And that is ridiculous. And the modern times we live in, the instant notification information, that I had to wait this late to be informed that I may have something. So again, we did it upon ourselves. I'll send you the link to that Wired magazine article, because every gay publication just bashed it, saying, what the fuck are you talking about? We did this, not you, because we lived through this, and we're still living through this.
As usual, when confronted with something that is so horrifying and heartbreaking that it alters the way that I view the world, I have no response. That is horrible. It's impressive. It's also disheartening that the gay community is so used to that you are able to respond so quickly and as a uniform group, which is fascinating. But ultimately, that's terrible.
Yes, it is. I told all my friends after I got mine, go here, do this, do this, do this. And it wasn't just me. It just kind of spread from there. There was a New York Times article about all the men waiting for the clinic, wrapped around the blocks numerous times. And when someone had to leave or something, they would text their friends saying, hey, there's a spot, come get it. And thankfully, you only really needed 1 to be moderately protected. 2, of course, would get you to that point. But again, we demanded something better, and they realized that they didn't have to give you the full dose in your arm. They could do it just below the skin and then spread out the dosage as necessary.
Fascinating. So we'll go back to body dysmorphia. So we're almost we're almost 80 years away from the first issue of Physique Pictorial, and I think with a contemporary lens, we can look at the birth of the Beefcake magazines as a sort of personal and sexual rejection of the stigma and stereotypes against gay men. Gay men were still men, after all. And I think the artwork of icons like Miser and Tom of Finland really captures this internalized identity that gay men struggled with. How can you be a man if you like other men? Well, according to the Beefcake magazines, how could you not be a man if you looked like those beefy models? There's also the fetishism of authority in Tom of Finland's work that I won't get into, but I do think it's worth noting that a lot of this comes across as a silent nod to gay men who defy stereotypes and who may pass as straight. Like any buff cop in uniform or any biker in a leather jacket, they may look rough and menacing, but they could be one of us.
That's another podcast right there, by the way.
The passing?
What you just said, the past 20 seconds, because there's been shaming of certain Twitter personalities on what they have done with the not worship, but the what's the fetishization of authority. People have taken it too far, and massive shame has happened in the past 2 months of what people have done. But they have done it, one, to get their rocks off, but two, within the introduction of OnlyFans and people making their own personal porn, which I made notes about body dysmorphia. Thankfully, we cut it off real fast. We as a collective community.
For clarity, like explain what the controversy was, or what was shut and what you shut down.
What is one of the worst, most aggressive forms of governmental authority within the past 100 years?
Oh, shit. There's like a list, but fuck, like police brutality.
Go on. Well, think of the worst ones, the ones that killed the most people. Tom of Finland skirted not skirted, that's not the right word.
Nazis.
Yes. Introduced the idea of men being turned on by masculine men, and thus men in authority or authority figures. And sometimes certain people take it a bit too far.
Oh, Nazi porn.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for shutting that down.
Yeah, well, we did very quickly.
Okay, so fuck, I didn't realize that. Okay, on to the 70s and 80s. Which I love. This is my favorite.
Do your best not to Google it later.
Well, it's gonna happen.
It was worse when Tumblr was so prevalent.
Oh fuck. I'm not gonna look it up on my work computer. I'll say that.
Don't do that now.
I may use. I have a. Do you know what a? Okay. Do you know what a boomstick is? Not the Evil Dead reference.
Hey, hello, Ash. Come on, I know what a boomstick is. Yes,
but not that reference.
I do not know.
It is a. I have it right here. It's a USB. It's a portable operating system for your computer, so that when you start up your computer, instead of starting the actual operating system, it boots from this. And it is basically it has an onion router. It has a Tor network on it. Basically hides everything. It leaves no trace. Like, yeah.
Okay, you're recording this, and I'm not. Why do you use? You know what? I'll ask you this later on the phone.
No, actually, I use it for research because one of my ongoing research things is like the far right and stuff. And there is just so much vile shit on the far right that I want to browse completely anonymously. I also use it to set up accounts on far right websites so that I can actually get like screen grabs, conversations and stuff. Yeah, that's primarily why I do it.
Does that not bother you, like mentally?
There is a reason that I take prolonged breaks from doing the podcast, and it is primarily because I need months to recuperate.
There are days when I wish I was just stupid and wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. So I had this. We're pushing 40, right? And I work in a field that when this is not. I work construction. It's not my dream job. I'm good at it. I have the education. Ever since like I could read and write, like my whole thing has been I want to be a writer. And some writers get breaks, some don't. I've never gotten a break. I've had my own success in my own way. And I was actually talking to Anna about this
the other day, by the way.
What's that?
I found your poster the other day, by the way.
Oh yeah, thanks for supporting me.
Of course, man.
So, but I was talking to Anna about this today. I said, I don't know how many fucking novels I've written that, I've actually talked to you about this most recent one. I've submitted to like 50, 60 agents, something like that. Nothing positive. And I said, I may not ever publish a novel. I'm not going to stop writing them, but like what I want more than anything is to write. And that is what I'm best at. I can spend hours doing that and be happy. I wish that I didn't have that nagging desire to like keep researching this shit and looking it up and like, cause it's depressing and it's horrifying. Like just,
well, which part, the research or the denial?
The resurgence of having to look up this shit because I feel like I have something to contribute. Okay. Like it's the complete resurgence of Nazism, like in the 21st century is
I don't understand.
Yeah. So,
It makes me want to get guns.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I wish I was dumb too. I wish I didn't have this,
Critical thinking
yes, an innate desire
to help do the right thing.
there you go. I wish I,
No, I had this conversation with my coworkers who are attorneys, mostly women. It's so most of my coworkers on the prosecuting side are women, but all the police officers I work with are men. And it's just weird clash of gender norms and what people think is the right thing and what's not. And then I have a really good work bestie, and she and I talk about all the time how we're just blown away by how difficult it is for people just to comprehend and just to do the right thing and what their definition of the right thing is.
yeah, I don't think we collectively have an idea of what right is.
No.
Okay.
Body dysmorphia.
On to the 70s and 80s.
Abs.
I've come to love Hal Fisher. He does these breakdowns of like what gay culture is, what the gay aesthetic is. Like right here, street fashion jock. Sleeveless undershirt, satin gym shorts, white socks, Adidas. Street fashion jock.
That style is coming back.
I have noticed. I've noticed this.
Yeah.
Straight community as well. It's bizarre. All right, so the best example of fashion or gay body imagery in the 70s and 80s would come from Hal Fisher, whose 1977 photo text exhibition, Gay Semiotics, literally explains everything you need to know about being gay in the 70s. From handkerchiefs in the back pocket to handlebar mustaches and earrings, Fisher provides an amazing reference point for what gay men looked like in real time. Fisher focused on portraying gay archetypes in a fashion that is more akin to textbook figures than spreads you would find in a magazine. Fisher's work is a bit tongue-in-cheek. For example, Street Fashion 40s Trash features a bearded man with coiffed hair in a sleeveless undershirt with a silk scarf, high-waisted gray flannel slacks, and tennis shoes. He is slim and muscular, but not scrawny, with an even tan. The basic gay sports thick 70s hair with a slight part, a heavy mustache, a zippered sweatshirt over a tucked-in flannel. He's wearing a pair of Chuck Taylors and a bracelet on his left wrist. He is slim, not particularly muscular, but not weak-looking. He just looks like a dude. One of my favorites is Street Fashion Leather. This man is wearing leather chaps over Levi's, a leather jacket with a cock ring on one of the epaulettes, black boots, and a bolo tie over a bare, hairy chest.
Pull this one.
Yeah,
because I didn't know. So I recognize some of the art. I didn't know the guy's name. But I apologize. I meant to send these before. But you said he was prominent in the 70s.
Yeah, 1977. His exhibition Gay Semiotics came out.
So Robert Mapplethorpe was someone I think started before this gentleman that you're talking about. Yeah, he started in the 60s and 70s. And I know Robert Mapplethorpe because he's more within my genre of gays.
Right.
I don't want to say my community, but the fetish community.
Right. Yeah, and it was a conscious decision on my part to go with Hal Fisher over Mapplethorpe.
Okay.
Simply,
my bad.
Simply because I like his aesthetic as far as.
No, you're right. He seems to be just the figure rather than the idea behind it.
Yeah. So this is Street Fashion Leather. This is your leather daddy.
Okay. I don't know this guy's work that much.
So the interesting thing here is this guy, the Street Fashion Leather guy. He just looks like one of my straight uncles. He kind of looks like Stephen King from the same era. Thick hair, thick beard. And you can tell he's got kind of a buff build, but he's not like, he doesn't have a bulky chest or big arms, but he very much fills out the leather. One common thread with Fisher's exhibition is the models. They are all slim to trim. Only a couple of examples of men with low body fat percentage, but all the rest seem to have a very deliberate physique. Their jeans contour to their bodies, outlining their legs and their asses. They also seem to be wearing clothes themselves as accessories, and their clothes make them as attractive as possible. But these men in the 1970s, they also tend to look to be playing certain roles. Some men look older than they are, some younger. But most men tend to look age appropriate. They're working with what they've got. And that's my take. They also all look relatively happy. But the good times don't last, do they, Ash?
Oh, God. Keep going. You find a better segue than that, but go on.
Yeah, well, okay. Anyway, in 1981, doctors in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco began seeing a trend among their gay male patients, treating more and more men with clusters of Kaposi sarcoma. These are the characteristic reddish purplish lesions that form on the skin of HIV patients, and cases of pneumocystis pneumonias, which is a type of pneumonia caused by a yeast-like fungus that are commonly found in the lungs of healthy people, but are opportunistic and will attack when one's immune system is compromised. This, of course, was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, which saw, if we were to say that the LGBT community had made progress through the 60s and 70s, this saw a resurgence of stigmatization, mass hysteria, marginalization, and targeted active violence against gays. I cannot possibly go into enough detail about the AIDS epidemic in this episode. That is like its own 12 series podcast, or 12-part series podcast. For one, it's very complex, and two, it goes way off topic. But we are talking about body image. So how does AIDS affect the gay man's ideal body image in the 1980s? Well, the 1980s were the age of the bodybuilder. Absolute units of testosterone. Jean-Claude Van Damme, Dolph Lundgren, Carl Weathers, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, all of them perfectly sculpted. But we even see a shift in professional wrestling thanks to the introduction of steroids. Wrestlers in the 70s were large, muscular guys. Look at Andre the Giant. But they weren't rippling with muscles. These guys were bulky, but they had just as much body fat as they did muscle. I mean, these guys were just huge. But looking at wrestling in the 1980s, you give rise to massive muscle men like Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Mr. Perfect, and Bret Hart. I'll quote from Graham Kane's 2009 paper from Gay and Lesbian Issues and Psychology Review. Quote, "The rise of the image of the gym-obsessed, low-fat gay man identified in research was a response to the effeminate, thin, and youth-obsessed gay man, who Harvey and Robinson speculated, quote, looked lean, underweight, and ill that emerged during the HIV/AIDS epidemic of the early 1980s. The stigma of HIV/AIDS may have pushed gay as well as heterosexual men to obsess about their body image and obtain a muscular physique," end quote. Some research supports the HIV theory of the super fit, super muscular ideal, and some seeks to not give HIV that much credit. But I think here's where we're going to split from peer-reviewed publications and research and veer into a real-world exploration of the gay male body. So, Ash, can you explain or settle or give your opinion about the real? Yeah, I know. Just bear with me. I'm a fucking news anchor.
There was no treatment for HIV/AIDS in the 70s and 80s. People were dying. It was the gay cancer. And the one thing that the doctor told you to do was to just take care of yourself. And how do you take care of yourself? You eat well, you work out, you try to stay happy as best you can, but there's still a point when your body will give out. And that's it. So people will go to extremes to stay as fit as possible. And when you are afflicted with HIV and AIDS, and even now when you're sick, you don't have that desire to eat. So your body will, in essence, eat the protein that's already in you, and that's your muscle mass. So if you can stay as fit as physically possible for as long as possible, that will extend your life. So I wouldn't go into the aesthetics of looking better than everyone else or being more masculine. You're talking about living another 30, 60, 90 days, if not another 2 years, by going to that gym every day for 1 to 2 hours and taking those steroids, whether they are real steroids or fake steroids or bull semen. You know what the hell you're taking when someone gives it to you off the street. So people did what they could to survive, because most of these men that died, they were in their 20s and 30s. And that's not a life, is it?
I would argue that no, it is not.
No, I mean, I couldn't really think of anything else, because if I was in this situation, I would do anything and everything that I could. A terrible example is the Dallas Buyers Club, that movie with Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto. They went to Mexico and found this cocktail of drugs that kept people healthier. They don't know what they were sticking in their body. And, well, that's another conversation. But they did it, and they realized that, you know what? I could live another 5 years healthier and have 2 years of slow death. Or I could take this crazy drug and live another 7 years. And you do what you could, because you're 22 and you're sick and your family's kicked you out because you're gay, and your mother doesn't want to touch you because you have skin lesions. So going back to monkeypox, you do what you can with the community that you have, because they're the ones that love you.
this is only anecdotal, and this is in order to empathize, I always, bring things back to me. But one of my biggest fears is cancer. We have a lot of cancer in my family, and like just the fear of like being diagnosed with cancer early or at a younger age than when I'm like 80 is pretty terrifying. And I work around a lot of there's a lot of cancer treatment where I work, and so you see a lot of cancer patients there. Yep. So one of those lingering questions in my head is like, okay, if I were diagnosed with cancer, like what would my life look like? And I got to say, it goes with exactly what you're saying. I would be more active. Like I would do as much as I could to stay as healthy as possible, not just to prolong my life, but also to prolong like the experiences that I enjoy, like spending time with my kid, going traveling and seeing places, like, all just the normal shit that you want to do when you're alive. And
most of my friends that are gay men, they're not people of faith, because if they were, their faith kicked them out and their family kicked them on top of that. So all you have is the here and now, and you do what is necessary to keep it going. I mean, I'm very fortunate. There's not much cancer in my family. And even then, during the AIDS epidemic in the 90s, it was still there. It was still a thing. It was treatable, but people were still dying. I was very, I don't use that phrase. I was very safe sex until well into my 30s before PrEP, pre-exposure prophylactic, became a thing. And since then, in my opinion, it's the era of free love. It's the era of free love for gay men again. And there was this this Fox News segment about COVID. I don't remember which blonde bimbo was the anchor at that moment, but she was interviewing Fauci. And the whole time she's like, well, how come we're going to get a vaccine for COVID? How come we're going to get one for HIV AIDS? And he was like, HIV AIDS had countless treatment options. This virus keeps changing. We have to stay on top of it. That's why we have to have this vaccine. And he's completely right. I would say age range, 15 to 20% of my gay male friends are HIV positive. And
that's high.
Yes. And again, we're 40. PrEP, pre-exposure prophylactic, didn't become a thing until 10 years ago. I've been on it for 8 years now. And it's not 100% guaranteed. It is 95, 98. And that's still pretty high. And those extra few percentage points come from the other partner that may not know that he is positive and he's not on his viral medication. But on top of that, we grew up in the era of abstinence only. There was no condom education besides what we saw on TV. That's why.
Did you not have sex ed at Riverdale?
We did, but it was like the sex ed of Mean Girls. You must wear a condom or you will get chlamydia and die.
This was part 2 of our multi-part series, Beefcake Dysmorphia, discussing the history and culture around the gay male physique, eating disorders, body image, HIV, AIDS, and all things related and unrelated. Again, I want to thank my lifelong friend Ashe for sitting and talking to me for so long about this topic. In the next episode, we discuss our individual experiences with body dysmorphia and how we came to be comfortable in our own skin. We explore the rapidly changing physical culture of the 1990s and early 2000s, and where to buy steroids. You can find us at uftpultra.com.